This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSPORT Fan Network. TalkSPORT. Powered by fans.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Red Side of the Trent as we come to you only a couple of days after that historic night on the South Coast, beating Brighton to set up a semi-final tie at Wembley against Manchester City as they overcome our bogey side in AFC Bournemouth yesterday. We're going to be joined by Gareth Chapman, who's the Manchester United fan in a minute, to preview the quick turnaround in tomorrow night's encounter at the City Ground as Manchester United come to town. But some news regarding Forest's finances, first of all, quickly. Kieran Maguire, football finance expert, I'm sure most people have heard him on TalkSPORT, Twitter, etc. Forest released their financial figures today, in which we made a £77 million in operating loss, but a spectacular year in terms of player sales turned this into a £12 million profit. So on the face of it, good news for the club. And hopefully if we can get into Europe, especially the Champions League this season, that allows us to spend some money in the summer and obviously add players to the squad, what we need for depth. Anyway, cracking on with tomorrow night, and we are now joined by Gareth Chapman, who's going to chat about Manchester United as they head to the City Ground tomorrow evening. First of all, Gaz, how are things? Are you okay?
Yeah, not too bad. Personal life's better than the football life, but you know.
Yeah, for those who won't know, obviously, because probably don't know Gaz, but Gaz has just, his partner's just had a baby, so we all send his congratulations to his family for that. Another Manchester United fan in the world, I'm guessing.
Yeah, poor sod.
Yeah, well, our times have changed, eh? I mean, we'll get straight into it, mate. Anyway, but we would have spoke about this before the game at your place in December, I believe it was. Ruben Amorim was in situ then. Eric Ten Hag had gone out the door. I mean, Amorim, it's been, I'd say, a bit of a roller coaster ride, hasn't it, so far? A bit indifferent. Some good results, some poor results. But you are unbeaten in 7, I believe it is now. Mm-hmm. If you want to take into account, obviously, drawing with Fulham before they won on penalties. Yeah. They won on penalties, was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So, I mean, what have you made of Amorim so far? Now he's had a few months into the job, and what are the differences from Eric Ten Hag, would you say?
I think there's definitely a difference. I think he's got something about him. I think it's too early to say. He's come on part way through the season. It's had a little bit of a window, wasn't able to really bring much in. Obviously, we've had Dorgy, we've had a lot of injuries. Obviously, he was suspended for a couple of games as well after a silly tackle. But I just think my only annoyance with him is his lack of awareness and the fact he's said in interviews that obviously we haven't necessarily got the players for the system that he's playing, but he carries on playing the same system. So it shows a little bit of a inability to change things when things aren't going right. Because if you look at like the top managers, they'll switch things around a little bit. Obviously, Fergie had that period where he went from like your 4-4-2 historically to your 4-3-3 with like Beckham. Obviously in the 4-4-2 you've got like Beckham, Keane, Scholes, Giggs. In the 4-3-3 you've got like your Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez kind of era. So there's an adaptability there. So that's my only worry. I think I like him. I think give him a summer, see how he gets on, see what he brings in. But obviously, if the results kind of stay how they have been this year, then I can't see any manager lasting that long, really.
Has there been any adaptability at all, or is he literally just, yeah, this is the way I'm going to go? Because some managers say this is the way I'm going to go, but they do tweak things. Like Nuno tweaks things with us. You know, we the media say we're defensive, we play a low block, and we hit teams on the counter, which predominantly is kind of true. But there is always tweaks and that in there. What changes it? You know what I mean?
I think it's just kept the formation throughout. It's just there's not been, or from what I've seen anyway, there's been no change at all. Obviously, he's brought in he brought in Dorgu, pretty pacey. He's had to delve into the academy a little bit just because of the injuries that we've had as well, which I don't think you can use as an excuse. I know sometimes there are certain bigger clubs, not bigger clubs, but bigger teams at the minute that have kind of hung their hat on injuries at the time and stuff like that. But I think that's why you have a squad. And if the squad depth isn't there, then that's where we're way, way behind at the minute.
I mean, obviously, you're 13th in the Premier League at the minute, so nothing's going to happen in the Premier League in terms of, apart from, just kind of pride, really, of getting up positions. Obviously, FA Cup and League Cup have now ended. So are you all your eggs in the Europa League basket? Because obviously, if you was to win that, you would get into the Champions League.
Got to be, aren't they? Yeah, I think they've got to be. I don't think you put any concentrate. You're safe in the Premier League now because I think we're just lucky that there's 3 teams that are absolutely abysmal. Like Tottenham, they look really bad as well. So I don't think we're going to do that badly to be able to get into a relegation fight. And realistically, I don't think we've ever been in a relegation fight this season. Obviously, the media like to jump on it because of who it is, but sells the papers, doesn't it? But I just think there's no choice but to just go all in the Europa. I think Bilbao are probably the favourites at the minute.
So they're grand into the final as well.
Yeah, so but I don't understand why they are favourites. But I do think they are. But we've not lost in the Europa yet, obviously through the group stages. So there's definitely positives there. I just think obviously the fans need to get behind them, everything like that throughout those games, and just see if we can.
I mean, would you, as a fan, accept, say, hypothetically speaking, that you'd finish 15th in the Premier League, but you'd win the Europa League? I mean, would you say, forget the league? I know it's embarrassingly bad for United.
I'd take finishing 17th and winning Europa, mate, to be fair.
But that answers that question then.
Because realistically, if we win, which we're not going to, if we win every single game, we're still probably going to finish 8th, 9th, which for United is ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
So I think if we can win the Europa to get in Champions League, that changes everything. Because if you've still got Champions League football to be able to turn around to players and say you are playing Champions League football, then the gravitas for that is just massively different to saying, oh, we're not in anything.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Obviously, as well, another man who's come into your club at the start of the season wanted is Jim Ratcliffe, who's a 25% stake he's got, Ante. So the Glazers still are technically the owners, but he's running the football operations, isn't he, really? Just a couple of questions on him. Now he's got his feet under the table, and obviously he's going through the business and sacking anybody who, according to the media, he can basically sack. I'm guessing you've watched the overlap with Gary Neville or Stick to Football. Yeah. What did you make of that interview?
Do you know what? I'm probably one of the very few people that, whether I like to accept it or not, understands that football clubs are no longer clubs as we know it. They're multi-billion-pound companies. And I just think that, yes, some of the decisions are a bit rubbish. Well, not necessarily rubbish, but insensitive, if you like, when you've got footballers on countless wages. But if it's the difference in Man United being here in 5 years and not being here in 5 years, then I'm sorry, but it's got to happen. Like there was I think we had a a body language expert on like 160 grand or 180 grand a year. It's like those things, obviously, that's logic. Like realistically, you don't need a body language coach, really. Unless there's obviously things that are happening that we don't know, which there probably are, but just little things like that. So I think some of them are good. I think he said a lot of what needed to be said. And even if it wasn't the right thing to say, I think like it's just the voice that the fans haven't heard for quite a while, probably for 10, 15 years, even at the end of Fergie's era. There was no senior like SLT member, if you like, coming out and saying, this is exactly what's happening. This is where we're at. This is what we need to do. Obviously, the ground and everything like that is coming, hopefully. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
What did you make of the fact that they chased Dan Ashworth for absolutely ages, paid quite a lot of compensation for him, and then after a few months was actually like, well, no, it's not working, and we're gonna mutually part ways.
Yeah, I mean, it is bad, but at the same time, just because you've brought somebody in doesn't mean they can. If it's not fitting, it's not fitting. And if his goal is to change the culture of the club and things like that, if there is bad eggs, then get rid of them. Whether he was the bad egg or not, I don't know. But I think this is it. We can always speculate and guess and kind of see what's going on. But do we really know?
I mean, would it be a bit of a concern, though, for you in terms of he surely must have known like what Ashworth was like, and he's obviously chasing for so long, and then he's kind of because Manchester United are always on TalkSPORT, so I know probably more than I should because you've got this guy, it's Omar Barada into Jason Wilcox into come in. You obviously had Ashworth, you've got Jim Ratcliffe, you've got Dave Brailsford. To me, like that seems a lot of people and ego. Like Radcliffe's at the top, you know, because he's the one who puts the money in. But all them people in the melting pot, it's like, well, who does what kind of thing? You know what I mean? So the hierarchy system, I think, from the outside looking in, probably fell down there. And Ashworth's like, well, I was brought in to do this, but I'm not doing this job, and that's why it's probably gone out.
I think, personally, like this is wild speculation, but I actually think that Radcliffe's taken that over, bought people in like Brailsford and people like that because they know that it will get taken over by the Arabs eventually. Because obviously we did have the other guy come in that was really, really interested and said that he only wanted sole ownership of it. So I think what they're trying to do is come in, steady the ship, and get the valuation back, because I do like watch the stocks and stuff like that as well, and I've seen the valuation fluctuating quite a bit, but they want to try and steady that out so that it's profit for Radcliffe and that lot, and then obviously profit for the Glazers, because obviously they've not had enough already. So I think they're treating it purely as a business, which unfortunately I think they're going to have to do, which is why they've probably put this project together with the ground. Which I know a lot of people aren't happy about. But yeah, I mean, only time will tell. They've only been in like a season and a bit. So it's just going to be interesting to see how it kind of plans out and pays out, really.
Yeah, moving on to that new stadium. And obviously, you know, it would mean a move away from Old Trafford, which has been your home for a long, long time. I couldn't put a number on it. You'd probably be able to tell me better. But it's something we've had at Forest where we was muted to move and have a new stadium, and it was going to be built at Tote, and it was basically backlashed out the door, and that idea was straight in the shredder. So it does look like we're staying and we'll be building at the City Ground. Would you be happy to move from Old Trafford, or would you rather see them try and renovate Old Trafford?
I actually think it's probably gone too far to be able to renovate it.
Okay.
And I just think with what you'd have to strip it back to, because I mean I went to Barcelona in October and went over to the new camp, which it was just a metal shell, because they've literally done that where they've stripped the entire building and it's just steel bars, whereas I think they'd have to do that with Old Trafford to be able to renovate it to the standard of what they expect a stadium to be now. I think the footprint is probably a little bit too small to be able to make it 100,000 seater stadium, which is what they want. And obviously it's the surrounding areas as well that they want to build and have like concerts and things like that. And they're even talking about putting the name in the hat for the League Cup and stuff, for the League Cup final. Because I know there's been talks of like Wembley wanting to solely have the FA Cup to bring the magic back to the FA Cup again.
Don't have the semi-finals there then.
Well, I've said it all along. Yeah. I don't think they should, but it is a shame. I mean, it's a long-standing stadium, and it would be a shame, but it's literally going to be moved about 100 meters, if that, maybe 50 meters.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think even like with us, if Forest had a really ideal location, say we stayed on the river where we are now, and they turned around and said we was building a new stadium, I think a lot more fans would be like, yeah, fair enough. But because the muted Totem, which you probably wouldn't have seen the articles, is closer to Pride Park than the City Ground, well, that went down, quicker than what Norwich usually do. So, yeah, that was straight in the bin. But just moving on to some players from United who've gone out on loan, and the main one, who's going to come up here, Marcus Rashford. He obviously got back in the England squad. There was a lot of Forest fans who weren't happy with that and thought Hudson-Odoi deserved to be in ahead of him, but he did back that up yesterday with a brace against Preston in the FA Cup. Jadon Sancho, I'd say, has been quite indifferent at Chelsea, and then Anthony's actually gone to Real Betis, and done pretty well over there, if you believe the reports. What do you think is a future for any of them at United, or do you think the hands have been washed with them?
Yeah, I think the whole Rashford hype is just. I find it really funny. Like, I think it's a disgrace that he got in the England team. I do think Hudson-Odoi should have probably got the spot, but I think he'd only played 3 games for Villa, and then gets called up for a national team. Which, to be honest, it worries me for the kind of tenure of the manager. Like, if you pick, because it goes against, like we've said all along, you need to pick people on merit and how they've played in there. And straight away he's picked him because it's Marcus Rashford, not because of form, because I don't think he's actually played that well for Villa. But again, because he's not playing well for Man U, it's straight away, as soon as he starts to like run 50 yards, it's like, oh my God, he's going to win the Ballon d'Or. Similar, it was the same thing for Sancho, wasn't it? The first 3 games, it was like, my God, give this lad the Ballon d'Or already. And then all of a sudden, his true colours have come through, and it's realised that he is the problem. I think Rashford's just gone too far past his hype. Well, he's not met his hype at all. He's had one good season for us in 10 years. Man U fans probably hyped him up. I probably got on the bandwagon during that season because he was smashing it, but he's just not there. Anthony, I think in his first 3 games they were hyping it and saying, "Oh my God, he's like coming out of his shell and everything." But I look at the index scores and stuff, and I think not one of them was above a 7. Okay, but because he got man of the match, it was like, oh my God, he's the best thing since sliced bread. But even so, he's a one-trick pony. He cuts it on his left and pings a ball in, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, he scored some cracking goals. Like, I think there was a volley from the edge of the box that was pretty all right. But I think when anything like that happens, a big hype, when you say high-profile players, like I'm saying that because of the price tag, like I think once those bridges are burnt, I don't think there's any way back.
Just obviously with Sancho and Anthony, I mean, what you spent on them combined, probably about 150 million, would you say, something around that figure?
Around that, yeah.
Does it kind of, as a fan, frustrate you looking at Anthony Elanga with us, who's having a really good season, had a pretty good season last year, despite the fact we were poor, and you've sold him for 10% of what you paid for them to? Or, like I see on Twitter, do you think he just needed to go away from United and kind of play every week somebody, or do you think he was never going to be good enough for what Man U want to be?
I don't know if it's what Man U want to be, because I think Man U and Man U fans need to realise that they're not Man U of the 90s and the noughties. Like, there's this whole stigma around, oh, he's not a Man United player. Well, what is a Man United player? Because at the moment, we're not going to get the Ronaldo or the Beckhams of the world, because if we were going to get that, we'd have Bellingham, we'd have Yamal, we'd have all these high profile players that are the best in the world, but we're not. So I think, it is frustrating, but Alanga did have his chance, really, and he had a bit of pace for us. I don't know whether it was the tactics that weren't working, but again, like Anthony's gone abroad, the tactics have changed. He's got a bit more freedom. He's playing well. Whether it's just they don't fit within the kind of the team, it's just the game's changed that much that you do have to find that balance and find the right team for the way that the manager's playing. And like, if Amorim brought the entire Sporting Lisbon team over to the Premier League, they'd probably do all right because they've got players that will fight for other players and they're a team and they're a unit. But I think if you're trying to piece it together in the modern game, it's so much harder.
Who would you kind of expect Amorim to be looking at bringing in the summer to kind of play this formation he wants to? Who would be kind of fit? Has there been any kind of rumours or?
Well, it's the same old, isn't it? There's rumours all the time. Obviously, you got Gyökeres, which I don't think he'll come. There was rumour of Frimpong, he's going to Liverpool. I think there's a few young lads. I know there's looked at Nico Williams from Bilbao.
No.
He's
playing well, very well.
Well, he is. He's
ex-Liverpool, so you know.
Yeah, but I just think it's those kind of players that are probably just tipping the balance of being world class. In which case, at the minute, they're not going to come to us unless they're coming for the wrong reasons. Which is
if you win the Europa League and get the Champions
League. Yeah, exactly. There is that, I think, but that's why I think there's so much pressure on it. But we'll see. I've seen weirder things happen.
Yeah. Right, to take your mind back then, I'm sorry to do this, back to December. So Forest, for the first time in Premier League history, actually won at Old Trafford 3-2. It was Milenkovic, Gibbs White from a howler from Onana and Chris Wood. I mean, there was all typical goals, what you'd expect to see against Manchester United. A free header, a goalkeeping error, and then Chris Wood just heading it back into an area and it actually just looping all the way in. What did you make? What did you make of that game as a whole?
I mean, it was a weird game, to be fair. Obviously, we got back into it and then let it go again, got back into it. And it was just a tippy-tappy game. I think Forest deserved it. And I think it was through that period where we were absolutely shocking as well. There's just nothing that we could do that was working. It just looked like there was absolutely no hope. Which was weird because obviously through that period, you're not playing in Europe because there's the kind of European competition break, and it was just woeful. But then I think because I went to the game, we played Brentford. I don't think that was long before that. Lost there. I literally just, do you know what I mean? It was through that period where I just didn't know what was happening.
Just having a quick look at that. Yeah, so you lost away at Arsenal, then lost to us. Looking when you played Brentford.
Probably a while before, actually.
Yeah, probably was. I think it was, yeah. I mean, is there anybody from Forest who caught your eye that day? You obviously speaking, I'm going to speak as like a neutral at that now and say, is there anyone you'd look at and think, oh, I'd actually like them in the United team? Or no?
I think, obviously he scored a lot of goals, but I don't think Chris Wood would work. He's obviously had a fantastic season. I think Nico Williams, unfortunate ties to Liverpool, which is a shame. But I think Alanga's had a great season, but obviously we've had him and it didn't work. But I do think there's a feel like Danilo looks quite good. I think Matt Sells as a keeper, he's probably been the best keeper in the league in my opinion this year.
Yeah, he has.
So I think there's a lot of players there that have done it. I think Milenkovic is probably the closest.
He's getting compared to Vidic with us. We've even adopted a song now for Vidic because he's literally in that mould. And actually compared him and Murillo to Vidic and Ferdinand as a type of partnership.
I mean, I think it's a different game now, isn't it? I don't think there's any players that can be really compared to defenders of old, just because you're not allowed to tackle anymore. But I just think like Gibbs White, obviously he's been fantastic, and I think at the minute that's probably the only player that I would say, if Bruno does go to Madrid, because he's been linked with Real Madrid, I think yesterday, then I think he could be a good replacement. But obviously there's that other thing of, is a player like that going to want to go to Man U at the minute? Like realistically, who wants to go to Man United at the minute unless they can show the end of the season that there's something worth fighting for, really?
It is true. I mean, this is the bit I enjoy the most, because what have you made of Forest this season? Because, we at the start of the season thought we'd probably finish, we was hoping mid-table, would say that was a good season, just away from them relegation places. And then all of a sudden, we're now fighting for the title. No, not for the title, but fighting for Champions League spots. There was a couple of weeks where we was in the title conversation when we played Liverpool at home. We're also into the semi-finals of the FA Cup, where we'll face your rivals in Manchester City. So are you one of these who thought, I can just watching Forest, I can just see what they're doing, I can just see it carrying on this season? Or was you one of these who thought, their bubble's going to burst soon?
I'll be honest, I was definitely one of the ones that thought the bubble had burst. My better half's stepdad, he's a Forest fan, brother-in-law's Forest fan and everything. So obviously there's conversations there quite a bit. And it kind of is one of those where they started all right, and then they carried on doing all right. The results are there. They're getting some decent points on the board. But it's just been pretty good, pretty consistent, play some good football. I think that's what I was saying with regards to bringing like the Sporting Lisbon team over, because they're a unit, because they're a team. Everybody knows where everybody is. Everybody knows where they need to be. They track back when they need to and all that. So I think, they probably stepped their foot off the last couple of weeks. I don't know if the results have been what you'd have expected the last couple of weeks. I know you've obviously just gone through to the semi-final of the cup.
Yeah, well, we had a bit of a blip, I'd say, and then Manchester City are coming to town. You're thinking, well, what City are going to turn up? Is it going to be the City of old? Is it going to be the City we've seen this season? And we actually played really well and obviously beat them. And they didn't really have any answer then. I remember in the first season, we equalised against City at home, and Forest fans will remember this, but they literally kicked off and they charged at us. And Jack Grealish took it past two players on the edge of our box, and you're holding your hand, and they just didn't really seem to know what to do. And because we kind of got stuck into them a bit, brought Yatesy on and that, they didn't really seem to know. And then, we went to Ipswich before the break, which is a typical banana skin, and put them out to sight. And then the other night at Brighton, we've gone through on penalties, as we have done every round apart from one so far. So, What
was your opinion on the penalty decision?
So, for me, once the referee's given it, because there is a little bit of contact, I think you go with the ref's decision. But if he hadn't given it, I would have said ref's decision fine. But because
I think it's stonewall.
Do you reckon? Well, you will enjoy it to our listeners. That was my take on it. If the referee's given it, stick with the referees. I wouldn't say it was a clear and obvious error. So, but thankfully it didn't matter. I mean, we had a chat about it yesterday. Thankfully, it didn't matter.
I think what annoyed me more than anything about it was the fact that they gave the ball to Brighton straight after. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, well, the referee was as abysmal the other night. I'm sure you've had your fair share of poor referees, because in the Premier League they all seem to be not the best. But thankfully it didn't matter. But so just probably last kind of question before we get into a lineup and a prediction. I bet you was kind of happy really that we did play 130 minutes it was in the end with extra time. Do you think that will have a bearing on tomorrow night, the fact that you've had the weekend off, whereas we've had a pretty grueling FA Cup tie?
I think as well. I do think it could have an impact, but again, I think at the minute I was talking to a mate of mine who comes to United with me, and we were just saying it depends what Man U turns up at the minute. like we could turn up against the bigger teams, or let's say the top 6 teams, and actually turn up. Like realistically, we could have scalped a draw in December when we were playing badly against you boys. And there's been times where we've probably lost by 1 or 2 or whatever, and we probably deserve to win some of the games. But I think it's obviously going to have a bearing into it. I mean, what was it? Yes, it was Sunday, wasn't it, yesterday? So it was, I think it could have that impact. But again, all depends who turns up.
So the next day, what lineup do you expect Manchester United to put out tomorrow night?
The academy team. No, I think there's been, I think Luke Shaw, who was back in training, so he's probably injured again after shaking Amarim's hand. But then I think who else was back from? There was 3 or 4 players.
Was it Maguire? I think, was he back?
Maguire was back. I think, I'm sure, no, Mainey was out for season 1, is it? I was reading it yesterday and I can't remember who they said. That was, sorry, Mainu back, and Aidan Heaven as centre back. So, I mean, he looked pretty all right. So I don't know. In fact, no, it wasn't him. That was a lie.
Yeah,
but apparently Mainu's almost ready. But again, these are players that are coming back from longer injuries. So I think it'll be a stripped back team, but there'll be a couple of academy players in there. Probably Hoyland up top. You've got that Cheeto off the bench for the academy. And then it will just be your standard defence, I think. I think even Lindelof might make an appearance. So
do you reckon you could go through it? What do you think? Then Onana in goal, I'm guessing. Then
Onana in goal. I think you've obviously got Dallo, who I'm hoping that gets sold in summer because he just never ever looks up. I think you probably have. There's a potential for Yoro, but again, it's maybe too soon after injury. So I'll be completely spitballing with what's available at the minute. Then in midfield, obviously you've got Bruno. I think Ericsson will probably play again because I know Ugarte had a niggle. And then wide, Garnacho will probably turn up. On the other side, they're going to be playing around with academy players again, and then, like I say, Hoyland up top.
So quite disjointed, then you'd say, probably.
Very much so. Yeah,
apart from probably Bruno, and that'd be interesting. So finally, a prediction of what it's going to be tomorrow night.
I think there'll be goals in it. I think there has been for the last few games with us, hasn't there? So I think every time I've been on here, I've said it's going to be a Forest win. So I'm going to hang my hat on United win 2-1.
Okay. Right. Well, we all obviously we've had this chat between ourselves. Like, you know, we're third and we're playing the team in 13th, and you're like, well, if you want to get Champions League, you've got to beat the team who's in 13th in the league, whoever they are.
Yeah.
Because it's Manchester United, that reputation. I mean, I'd be disappointed from our perspective if it wasn't anything but a win tomorrow night, which is crazy saying, but that's what we are. But right, mate, that's it anyway. So thank you for coming on and that. And
it was good.
Yeah, best of luck tomorrow evening. But
same to you.
So yeah, we'll see who's the better team.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Right, so that was Gareth Chapman, who kindly joined us to chat about the game tomorrow night from a Manchester United fans' perspective. As we said earlier, they come to the City Ground in what is another big game for us in the Premier League. We'll be back on Wednesday evening to review the game. Hopefully, we'll review another win. Hopefully, we might have some ticket info, etc., for the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley against Manchester City. But until then, if you enjoy this pod, give us a like, a comment on his Facebook, on his Instagram, on his TikTok, subscribe on his YouTube, etc., etc. And until the next one, thank you very much for listening / watching, and come on, you Red.